Officer Russell Keegan had been with the Savannah-Chatham Metropolitan Police Department for 6 years when he walked into a situation that would destroy his career and cost the city $22.5 million. He was 31 years old, young enough to still think that instinct was the same thing as evidence, but experienced enough that every supervisor expected better. 6 years, 9 formal complaints, 9. 7 involved allegations that Keegan had detained, questioned, or harassed black residents doing absolutely nothing wrong. Each complaint ended the same way: mandatory sensitivity training that Keegan attended but never absorbed. One Saturday afternoon in October, his pattern of assuming black people didn't belong in beautiful spaces finally collided with a woman whose son-in-law's best man happened to be the FBI regional chief for the Southeast Division. And that collision would end Keegan's career, cost the city $22.5 million, and expose a department that had watched 9 identical complaints pile up and done nothing meaningful about any of them. A black woman in her early 60s, Claudette Hayward, was standing beside her silver Mercedes in the parking lot of the historic Whitfield Chapel on Isle of Hope, adjusting the corsage on her champagne-colored Mother of the Bride gown. Her clutch purse held her invitation, her reading glasses, and a handwritten note she planned to slip into her daughter's bouquet before the ceremony. No crime, no disturbance, no trespassing, just a mother about to watch her youngest daughter get married. But Officer Keegan saw her through a filter so distorted by assumptions about who belongs at an elegant venue in an affluent Savannah neighborhood that he couldn't process a black woman in formal attire as the mother of the bride. Before we dive deeper, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Whitfield Chapel sits at the end of a live oak line drive on Parkersburg Road in the Isle of Hope neighborhood, about 15 minutes southeast of downtown Savannah. Built in 1889, the chapel is a white clapboard structure with arched stained glass windows, a modest steeple, and enough pews to seat about 120 guests. It's the kind of venue couples choose when they want something intimate, something rooted in history, something that looks like it belongs on the cover of a Southern wedding magazine. The Isle of Hope is one of Savannah's most exclusive residential enclaves. The homes along Bluff Drive overlook the Skidaway River, many of them antebellum estates maintained for generations. Property values average $1.2 million. The residents are overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly affluent, and overwhelmingly accustomed to a certain type of neighbor. It was 3:45 p.m. on a Saturday in late October. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy of live oaks, casting long golden shadows across the chapel's crushed shell parking area. The temperature was 74 degrees. A string quartet was warming up inside the chapel. Guests in linen suits and pastel dresses were filing through the double doors. Flower arrangements in peach and ivory lined the walkway. Caterers were setting up under a white tent behind the chapel for the reception, the kind of afternoon where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. About 40 cars filled the small lot and lined the narrow road. A uniformed valet service was directing traffic. Everything was organized, controlled, and exactly how an elegant Savannah wedding should look. Claudette Hayward had spent 34 years as a public school educator in Chatham County, 34 years of shaping young minds, fighting for funding, and proving that excellence has nothing to do with zip codes. She'd started as a 9th grade English teacher at Saul C. Johnson High School in 1987, fresh out of Spelman College. She taught there for 11 years, earning Teacher of the Year honors twice and mentoring over 200 students who went on to attend college. By the time the county promoted her, her students already knew. Dr. Hayward didn't just teach, she transformed. She completed her master's at Georgia Southern University in 2001, then her Ed.D. at Mercer University in 2007. Her dissertation on literacy outcomes in Title I schools was cited in 3 state policy reports. She served as assistant principal at Groves High School, then principal at Myers Middle School, turning an underperforming school into one with a distinguished school designation within 3 years. In 2015, she was appointed Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction for the entire Chatham County system, overseeing 37 schools and nearly 40,000 students. Her colleagues called her Dr. Hayward. Her former students called her the reason they went to college. At 62, Claudette had earned every square inch of the life she occupied. She'd raised 2 daughters on her own after her husband, Master Sergeant Ronald Hayward, was killed by an IED in Afghanistan in 2009. She'd put both girls through college on a public educator's salary. She sang alto in the choir at First African Baptist Church. Her oldest, Monique, was a pharmacist in Atlanta. Her youngest, Natalie, was the one getting married today. That Saturday, Claudette had arrived at the chapel at 3:20 p.m., 25 minutes before the ceremony. She wore a champagne silk dress with a matching bolero jacket, pearl earrings her husband had given her on their 20th anniversary, and a corsage of ivory roses. She carried a gold clutch with her invitation and a handwritten note she planned to slip into Natalie's bouquet. She'd parked near the edge of the lot and was adjusting her corsage in the side mirror when she heard tires on gravel behind her. She turned to see a patrol car pulling up. She'd done nothing out of the ordinary. She was a mother, at a chapel, for a wedding. But to one person, Claudette Hayward's presence in that parking lot was a problem. And that person had already made the call. Russell Keegan was 31 years old. He'd joined the Savannah Chatham Metropolitan Police Department straight out of the criminal justice program at Georgia Southern, the kind of recruit who volunteered for extra shifts and chased commendations. His supervisors described him as proactive and confident in the field, but occasionally overzealous in his approach to community contacts. Overzealous. That was the word his department used when what they meant was that Keegan had a pattern of treating black people like suspects. In 6 years, Keegan had compiled a record that should have raised alarms at every level of the chain of command. 9 complaints. 9. 7 of them involved allegations of racial profiling, unlawful detention, or harassment of black residents in predominantly white or affluent areas of Savannah. Here's what 9 complaints in 6 years looked like. In March 2020, Keegan detained a black real estate agent for 22 minutes outside a home she was showing on Ardsley Park. The homeowner had to come outside and confirm the agent's identity before Keegan would release her. Written reprimand, sensitivity training. In August 2021, Keegan questioned a black UPS driver making deliveries on Victory Drive, demanding to see his route manifest because a neighbor reported a suspicious vehicle. The driver was in full uniform, driving a marked UPS truck. Counseling session. No formal discipline. In November 2021, Keegan approached a black couple sitting in their own car outside their home on East 48th Street, ordering them out of the vehicle and demanding proof of residency. Their name was on the mailbox 3 feet away. Verbal warning. In June 2022, Keegan responded to a noise complaint at a Juneteenth celebration in Daffin Park and told the organizers they needed to shut down immediately despite their having a valid city permit displayed on the main table. 2 written complaints were filed, both closed as unfounded even though the permit was time-stamped and photographed. 9 complaints in 6 years. That's not bad luck. That's not a learning curve. That's a pattern. A pattern the department documented meticulously and refused to interrupt. The call that brought Keegan to Whitfield Chapel came in at 3:38 p.m. A woman who identified herself only as a concerned neighbor reported a suspicious woman lingering in the chapel parking lot. The dispatcher asked if the woman was engaging in criminal behavior. The caller said no, but insisted something didn't look right. Keegan responded from less than 2 miles away. In his mind, the narrative was already written. Suspicious person near expensive cars at an expensive venue. Probably there to steal something. Probably didn't belong. He arrived at 3:43 p.m. His patrol car rolled slowly into the lot, past the valets, past the guests in formal wear. He scanned the scene. Flower arrangements, expensive cars. And then his eyes landed on Claudette Hayward standing beside her Mercedes, adjusting something on her dress. A black woman, near expensive cars, in a white neighborhood. In Keegan's mind, that had to be the problem. He stepped out and walked directly toward her. Do you think officers with 7 or more racial profiling complaints should be allowed to remain on active patrol? Drop your answer below. Claudette Hayward was checking her reflection in the car window when she heard boots on gravel. She turned and saw a uniformed officer approaching, one hand on his duty belt, his expression fixed in that blend of authority and suspicion she'd seen directed at black people her entire life. You need to step away from the vehicle, ma'am. Now. Claudette blinked. She looked at the officer, then at the chapel where her daughter was waiting, then back at the officer. I'm sorry, what? I'm at my daughter's wedding. Keegan's eyes swept over her. The champagne dress, the corsage, the pearl earrings, none of it computed. We received a report that a suspicious individual is attempting to enter this venue without authorization. Without authorization? My daughter Natalie is inside that church right now. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes and I'm supposed to walk her down the aisle. The caller described someone who doesn't belong here. You match that description. Claudette felt the heat rise in her chest, but 34 years in public education had given her an iron grip on composure. I don't belong at my own daughter's wedding. I'm Dr. Claudette Hayward. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Chatham County Public Schools. I'm the mother of the bride. Walk inside that chapel and ask any one of the 120 people sitting in those pews. Ma'am, I need you to put your hands on the vehicle. I'm detaining you until we verify your identity. Verify my identity? I have my invitation right here. Let me show you. Claudette reached for her clutch. Keegan's hand dropped to his holster. Don't reach for anything. Hands on the vehicle. Now, I'm reaching for a wedding invitation. That's all. I said, hands on the car. Claudette placed her hands on the warm metal of the Mercedes. Her invitation was 6 inches away. Her daughter was 200 feet away, inside a chapel, standing in a white dress, waiting for the woman who was now being detained by a man who couldn't see past the color of her skin. This is where assumptions become accusations. Officer Keegan had received a call about a suspicious person near vehicles. When he arrived, he saw a black woman near a vehicle. In his mind, that confirmed the complaint. The champagne dress didn't register. The corsage didn't register. None of it made it through the filter. His bias had already reached its verdict, and no evidence was going to overturn it. My son-in-law's best man is standing at that altar right now. His name is Marcus Jeffries. He's the FBI regional chief for the Southeast Division. Walk inside and ask him. Keegan's jaw tightened. He didn't move toward the chapel. He didn't verify a single word. I don't care who you say is in there. Right now I'm dealing with you. You're dealing with me. A 62-year-old woman in a mother-of-the-bride dress, wearing a corsage, at a wedding, standing next to my own car. What exactly do you think is happening here, officer? Keegan pulled out his handcuffs. The parking lot had gone still. 2 valets near the entrance stopped directing cars and stared. A couple walking toward the chapel froze. A groomsman who'd stepped outside saw the handcuffs come out and immediately reached for his phone. Inside the chapel, the string quartet was still playing Pachelbel's Canon. Turn around. You're being detained for trespassing and obstruction. I'm not trespassing. I'm a wedding guest. I'm the mother of the bride, and I have not obstructed anything. You haven't even tried to verify what I've told you. Turn around now. Claudette knew what was happening. She'd watched it happen to her students, to their parents, to black men and women across this country. She'd just never imagined it would happen to her, in a champagne dress, on the day her baby girl was getting married. I'm complying under protest. I want every person in this parking lot to see what is happening right now. My name is Dr. Claudette Hayward. I am the Associate Superintendent for Chatham County Public Schools. I am the mother of the bride. This officer is detaining me at my daughter's wedding because I am a black woman in a parking lot. Keegan spun her around and snapped the handcuffs on. Tight. The metal bit into the skin above her pearl bracelet, the one Ronald had given her. Claudette winced but kept her chin up and her voice clear. Those are too tight. I'm 62 years old and I'm not resisting. Keegan didn't adjust them. The groomsman with the phone had captured everything from 15 feet away. Another guest was recording from the chapel steps. And then the groomsman turned and ran inside the chapel. Should officers who detain civilians at documented private events without verifying with event organizers face immediate suspension? Let me know what you think. Inside Whitfield Chapel, Marcus Jeffries was standing at the altar beside the groom, Devin Marshall, when a groomsman burst through the side door and whispered urgently. Marcus Jeffries was 48 years old with 24 years in the FBI, the last 6 as regional chief for the Southeast Division. When the groomsman whispered that a police officer had just handcuffed Dr. Claudette Hayward in the parking lot, Jeffries felt cold, focused fury. He walked down the side aisle past 120 confused guests and pushed through the chapel doors into the October sunlight. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. Claudette Hayward, the woman who'd helped him study for the bar exam 20 years ago, the woman who'd hosted him for Thanksgiving dinners when he had nowhere else to go, was standing beside a patrol car in handcuffs. Her corsage was crushed. Her champagne dress had a streak of dust along the hip. Tears were running down her face, but her chin was up. Jeffries walked directly toward Keegan. 6'3", 220 pounds, charcoal suit, American flag pin on his lapel. His FBI credentials were in his breast pocket. Officer, I'm Marcus Jeffries, FBI Regional Chief, Southeast Division. Take those handcuffs off this woman immediately. Keegan turned. His face registered the suit, the height, the authority radiating from every syllable. But his ego hadn't caught up with his circumstances. Sir, this is a police matter. Please step back. Jeffries pulled his credentials from his pocket and held them open at Keegan's eye level. The gold badge caught the afternoon light. This is not a request. This woman is Dr. Claudette Hayward. She is the mother of the bride. That wedding is inside that chapel. I am the best man. There are 120 witnesses inside and a dozen more out here recording this on their phones. Take the cuffs off now, or I make one phone call and your badge is gone before the sun sets. Keegan looked at the credentials. His face lost its color. He looked at Claudette, at the chapel where guests were now pressed against the windows, at the phones pointed at him from every direction. He unlocked the handcuffs. Claudette rubbed her wrists. Deep red marks circled both of them, angry welts where the metal had been too tight for too long. She looked at Jeffries, and for the first time her composure cracked, but only for a moment. They stopped the music, Marcus. Natalie is inside wondering where I am. Keegan's Sergeant David Okonkwo arrived 4 minutes later. Okonkwo was a 19-year veteran, one of the highest-ranking black officers in the department. He'd read Keegan's file. He knew the complaint history. When he saw Claudette Hayward with red marks on her wrists and Russell Keegan standing ashen-faced beside his patrol car, he understood immediately. Keegan, badge and radio. You're on administrative leave effective right now. Sarge, I responded to a call about a suspicious. You detained the mother of the bride at her daughter's wedding, in handcuffs, while the FBI regional chief was standing at the altar. Badge, radio, now. Keegan unclipped his badge and handed it over with trembling fingers, then his radio. For the first time, the weight of what he'd done was visible on his face. Okonkwo turned to Claudette. His voice was quiet and heavy. Dr. Hayward, I am profoundly sorry. This should never have happened. Not today, not any day. Claudette looked at him for a long moment. Sergeant, I appreciate that. But your officer had 9 complaints. 9. And he was still out here doing this. An apology doesn't fix that. I'll be speaking to an attorney on Monday. She straightened her dress, gently touched her crushed corsage, and turned toward the chapel. Marcus Jeffries fell into step beside her. 7 minutes later, at 4:12 p.m., 12 minutes behind schedule, Claudette Hayward walked her daughter Natalie down the aisle of Whitfield Chapel. The string quartet played, the guests rose, and more than a few had tears in their eyes for reasons that had nothing to do with the vows. Do you think police departments should be required to remove officers from active duty after 5 or more discrimination-related complaints? Drop your answer below. Within 3 hours, the videos were everywhere. Multiple angles from witnesses. The champagne dress, the handcuffs, the FBI credentials. The moment Keegan's face went white. Black mother of the bride, handcuffed at daughter's wedding. Best man was FBI Regional Chief Savannah Officer Detain's 62-year-old educator at her own daughter's wedding. FBI Chief steps off altar to free mother of bride from handcuffs. The outrage was instantaneous and national. The FBI issued a formal statement calling the detention appalling and an affront to constitutional rights. The NAACP Georgia chapter demanded an independent investigation. The Chatham County Board of Education issued a statement calling Dr. Hayward one of the most respected educators in the county's history. 3 city council members called for Keegan's immediate termination. Keegan's career imploded within days. The administrative leave became an internal affairs investigation. The investigation became a recommendation for termination. CNN, MSNBC, and the Washington Post all ran the story. The hashtag Justice for Claudette trended nationally for 2 days. Keegan released a brief statement through his attorney. Officer Keegan responded to a dispatch call and followed department protocol. The statement was widely mocked. The anonymous caller who reported a suspicious woman was never publicly identified, but the 911 recording was obtained through a public records request, and the description matched no criminal activity. A woman standing beside a car near a chapel during an event. Claudette Hayward retained civil rights attorney Darnell Richardson of Richardson & Associates in Atlanta, one of the most respected civil rights firms in the Southeast. The lawsuit was filed 6 weeks after the wedding. It named Officer Russell Keegan individually, Sergeant David Okonkwo in a supervisory liability capacity, the Savannah-Chatham Metropolitan Police Department, and the City of Savannah. The claims were comprehensive: unlawful detention without probable cause, false imprisonment, violation of 4th and 14th Amendment rights, racial profiling under Section 1983, excessive use of force, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and failure to implement meaningful discipline despite 9 prior complaints. The complaint included Keegan's complete internal affairs file, 9 complaints, 7 involving racial profiling, written reprimands that changed nothing, supervisors who noted concerns and then signed off on Keegan continuing the same pattern. The city's attorneys reviewed the evidence and reached the conclusion that Sergeant Okonkwo had reached in that parking lot, indefensible. The videos were everywhere. The witnesses were numerous. The FBI regional chief had personally witnessed the aftermath. The victim was a 62-year-old educator with a doctorate and red marks on her wrists. The city of Savannah settled 14 months after the incident, $22.5 million paid to Dr. Claudette Hayward. The settlement included mandatory department-wide reforms, an independent review of all complaints against officers with 3 or more allegations of racial profiling, and the establishment of a civilian oversight board with binding disciplinary authority over the department. Officer Russell Keegan was terminated 11 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was direct, comprehensive, and final. Officer Keegan detained a civilian without probable cause at a private event, refused to verify her identity through readily available means, applied excessively tight handcuffs to a compliant 62-year-old woman, and disrupted a wedding ceremony. This incident reflects a documented pattern of discriminatory policing evidenced by 9 prior complaints. His employment is terminated immediately without eligibility for rehire. Keegan's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His 6-year law enforcement career ended at age 31. His police union reviewed the evidence and quietly withdrew its appeal. No agency in Georgia would touch him. Should anonymous callers who make racially motivated reports face legal consequences when those reports lead to civil rights violations? Let me know in the comments. Claudette Hayward testified before the Savannah City Council 4 months after the settlement. The chamber was standing room only. Television cameras lined the back wall. Natalie Marshall sat beside her mother holding her hand. Claudette's testimony was measured, unflinching, and devastating. I've been an educator in this county for 34 years. I have a doctorate from Mercer University. I've served as Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I've been recognized twice by the Governor's Office for my contributions to public education. I've spent my entire career teaching young people that this country rewards hard work, integrity, and perseverance. She paused. The chamber was silent. And on the day my youngest daughter got married, I was handcuffed in a parking lot by a police officer who looked at me and decided that a black woman in a nice dress standing next to a nice car at a nice venue couldn't possibly belong there. He didn't ask the valets who'd watched me park. He didn't walk inside the chapel where my name was printed on the program. He didn't look at the invitation that was sitting in plain view in my purse. He didn't call dispatch to verify who I was. He saw my skin and reached for his handcuffs. Another pause. Her voice didn't waver. It carried the weight of 34 years in education, of raising 2 daughters alone, of earning every credential a person can earn and still being treated like a suspect. 9 complaints in 6 years, 7 of them about racial profiling. That's not bad luck. That's not a few misunderstandings. That's not a training gap. That's a pattern your department documented and filed and trained around and ignored until that officer handcuffed the wrong woman on the wrong day in front of the wrong witnesses. She let that sit. $22.5 million is a significant settlement. I understand that, and I don't take it lightly. But it doesn't give me back those 7 minutes my daughter stood at the altar wondering where her mother was. It doesn't undo the image of me in handcuffs that every guest at that wedding now carries in their memory. It doesn't erase the fact that my granddaughter, when she's old enough, will see that video and know that her grandmother was treated like a criminal for standing in a parking lot in a pretty dress. She looked directly at the council members. If this can happen to me, with my degrees and my title and the FBI regional chief standing 10 feet away, what happens to the young black woman who doesn't have any of that? What happens to the teenager walking through a neighborhood someone decided he doesn't belong in? What happens to the mother working 2 jobs who can't afford a lawyer? What happens to the man loading groceries into his car in the wrong parking lot? That's the question this council needs to answer. Not for me, for them. The chamber erupted in sustained applause. 3 council members were visibly emotional. The council voted unanimously that evening to allocate $4.2 million for police reform implementation and to establish the independent civilian oversight board outlined in the settlement agreement. This wasn't just about 1 officer and 1 parking lot. This was about a department that let Russell Keegan accumulate 9 complaints in 6 years and never once removed him from patrol. A system that treated each incident as isolated, filed each complaint separately, completed each training on paper, and never connected the dots that formed a clear picture of an officer who saw black skin and assumed criminal intent. Keegan's record told the story his supervisors chose to ignore. 9 complaints, 7 involving the same pattern, the same assumptions, the same outcome, a black person minding their own business, confronted by an officer who decided they didn't belong. The documentation was there, the pattern was unmistakable. But the department treated each complaint like a paperwork exercise, administered sensitivity training like aspirin for a systemic disease, and sent Keegan back out to do it again. Russell Keegan's career is over. That's consequence. The city paid $22.5 million. That's accountability. A civilian oversight board now has binding authority over officer discipline. That's progress. But money doesn't give Claudette Hayward back her daughter's wedding day. A termination letter doesn't erase the image of a grandmother in handcuffs in a chapel parking lot. A reform policy doesn't undo the message sent to every black person in Savannah that afternoon. Your credentials don't matter. Your dress doesn't matter if someone sees your skin and decides you don't belong. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally pull officers off patrol after the 3rd complaint instead of waiting for the 9th? Do dispatchers receive mandatory training to push back on calls that describe no criminal activity? Do we finally acknowledge that suspicious person, in far too many cases, just means black person in a space someone has decided should be white? Because if we don't fix the system that kept Keegan on patrol for 6 years despite 9 complaints, if we don't address the culture that taught an anonymous caller to watch a woman adjust her corsage and pick up the phone to call police, Then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next parking lot, the next mother, the next wedding, the next video. Comment if you believe this should be law. Officers with 3 or more sustained complaints related to racial profiling or discriminatory policing face mandatory reassignment to non-patrol duties pending independent review, and anonymous callers whose false reports lead to documented civil rights violations face criminal liability. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change starts with pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the educators, the mothers, the grandmothers, the ordinary people who deserve to attend their daughter's wedding without being treated like a criminal. This isn't just about one officer or one mother. It's about all of us and the world we choose to accept.